Do we have a safe word?
Have a safe word.
Get me out of here.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but apparently there was a massive bit of a new invention invented by a guy that the BBC covered, which was a pull cord, which disconnected Zoom and turned everything off. And basically you could reach for the pull cord and pull it, and then it just disconnected your internet and everything.
You mean like this one?
Yeah, that one. Welcome to the Fintech Times Presents series of webinars. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Firstly, I'd like to say hello to everyone out there online and welcome you to today's webinar. This month, we've been talking about GameTech within the Fintech Times, and this particular webinar is going to look at tokenization. We'd really love it if you could follow the conversation using the hashtag Fintech Times GameTech, and obviously follow us at the Fintech Times. Digital collectibles are really on the rise. New technology platforms are now working with game developers to provide a way of monetizing in-game items, which are then made popular by limited edition esports tournaments, creating a market for supply and demand of winning team exclusive tournament collectibles. In this webinar, we will explore not just the COVID-19 lockdown that is driving a whole new market of cooped up individuals, but also how technology has been used to introduce rare items and celebrity endorsed products, which create a valuable element to asset trading. We've got a great group of people for today's discussion. Between them, they have over 50 years of experience in the games industry. So I'm now going to invite them to all join me on screen. And I'm going to start off by asking each of them to give them a short introduction. So, good morning, Vlad. Thanks for joining us. Perhaps you could start and introduce yourself, please.
Oh, well, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having this conversation. And yeah, my name is Vlad Panchenko, and I'm running DMarket company. We do multiple things, but everything is connected to video games, items, and bringing and creating some collectibles around some interesting things like esports, for example, entities. We have DMarket Marketplace as an exchange where we help to build liquidity for games, for in-game items, and doing that on the blockchain and off the blockchain. And using all of those stacks, we built next-gen software solutions. Like for now, we're building the loyalty system for the esports team, where lots of collectibles could be dropped, crafted, exchanged, and everything also on NFT and the blockchain. So that's the core of expertise we have all around gaming, trading, and creating value of something collectible.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And Gary, if perhaps you could give us a quick introduction.
Sure. I'm Gary Bracey. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Terra, which specializes an NFT marketplace, as well as a complete ecosystem, which offers interaction with your collectibles, with your NFTs. So we have this complete vertical platform, if you like, which allows you to buy, trade, and also interact with the NFTs on a very, very social level. Inspired originally by companies like DMarket, who obviously are still having a fantastic business with the sale of skins. We don't deal with skins at all, but we create our own items and sell them on our own marketplace, and they're compatible with our ecosystem. But I think Vlad and I could have an interesting conversation after this interview. But that's what we do.
Anyway. With pleasure.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask you to explain what an NFT is later for audience that don't know. Sure. And then last but not least, obviously, Onur, if you could give us a quick introduction.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the invite, Mark. I'm Onur Keser, and I'm the CEO of Fish Director at Papara. And Papara is the most downloaded financial super app in Turkey with over 6.5 million users. And with the expanding demographic of the gamers, almost more than half of our active users have become gamers, especially during the pandemic. And gaming is becoming more screen agnostic and device agnostic comparing to what it used to be. So we're doing our best to develop our core features around to complement the gamers.
Fantastic, wonderful. Okay, so just to sort of kick us off, I'm probably going to come to you first of all, Vlad. Can you give us a little bit of history about where the concept of sort of trading skins and tokenizing skins came from? You know, because obviously a lot of our audience will think of games as, you know, the original Xbox where you sat in front of it and you played a game and then you put it away when you were done. Where did the trading element of skins come into play, do you think?
Well, I think it all comes from our human nature. So it came like millions of years ago when we started trading with each other. So games, they're like social networks of today and tomorrow. So when we do some socializing anywhere, we want to trade something, exchange something. So that's the basic instinct. But then there were like even, I don't know, I remember games I was playing 15, 20 years ago, where I was collecting something, I was crafting something, and somebody else didn't have it. So eventually I wanted to trade. But again, sometimes there were no technologies. Sometimes there were no like allowance from the game developers. But anyways, this is our human nature. We want to trade and we want to collect. And that's, by the way, half of the basics where all the games are built on. So usually you're trying to achieve something, not only like beating the boss, but also grinding different items. So this is our human nature. And I think everybody on this call is trying just to make us do it in a better, safer, and an easier way to have this fun.
Yeah, so as you say, the interesting thing that you said there was obviously that the games originally are always built on tasks. You collect something or you achieve something and you get to the next level. So that kind of was where that whole sort of concept of an asset from getting delivered within the game. Maybe moving to Gary, obviously what you guys have done is sort of taken that one step further, and we're talking about sort of creating an asset almost independently of a game. So as I sort of alluded to in the introduction, could you explain to us what an NFT is, first of all, and then explain how they kind of came to be?
Sure. Well, my background is video games as well, so I obviously come from that background, understand completely what Vlad's company is doing. An NFT stands for non-fungible token, which is something I had no idea what it meant when I first started. And essentially what it is it's something that's unique. The blockchain offers the ability to create assets, virtual goods, in limited quantities. So we can mint an action figure, for instance, of Godzilla, which we have the rights for. So we can mint a 3D model of Godzilla in digital format, and we can say we are only creating 5 of these, and there will only ever be 5 of these. And we can make a King Kong, and we can say we are making 10,000 of these, and there will only ever be 10,000 of these. And the rarity of those items will dictate, by and large, the value. So the 1 of 10 Godzilla may cost $1,000, but the 1 of 10,000 King Kong may only cost $20, etc., etc. And what happens is the blockchain tracks the ownership and trading history of each asset and lends it permanence and also authentication. So if I say there are only 10 of these made, you can actually go onto the blockchain, there's a record, and you can see this is 1 of 10, and you know therefore that the value that they're offering is genuine. It's also permanent, so to the point whereby if I've got a very valuable collectible, a very valuable NFT, and I die, which I hope doesn't happen, then I can actually have that in the will for my kids. And it's an actual item that retains value and can be passed on, and of course can be traded. And when you trade through the blockchain, I want to sell my $10,000 NFT to you for $20,000, then the transaction takes place on the blockchain and the ownership is recorded. And that provenance is permanent on the blockchain. You can see the history and trades, previous trades of that item. What's also interesting as a by the by is because we're in control of that, every item on the blockchain is governed by the word, every NFT is governed by a smart contract. Then the company who originally licensed King Kong, the IP owners, actually get a small percentage residual of every subsequent trade that takes place forever. So unlike the physical world, whereby if someone sells a book that they have and sells it to someone else, the actual original publisher or author gets nothing. Here, the owner of the original IP always gets rewarded for subsequent trades. Sorry, long answer, but I thought I'd cover it all.
Yeah, no, it's much appreciated. And I guess, as we sort of said, it's kind of like a come out of the sort of the gaming industry. I was going to move to Onur and ask you a sort of question with your experience of sort of esports and that sort of thing. I guess this sort of collectible becomes really interesting for brands and owners in that respect. Have you seen that sort of rise of these sort of designed cards for gamers, etc.?
I mean, recently we have witnessed the tokenization has been increasing the user engagement while making these digital items exciting assets to hold and trade. And with the use of blockchain, players can take ownership of these in-game assets through tokens, and adopting these blockchain technologies and tokens by gaming companies is actually allowing gamers to exchange these digital items easily while reversing the value flow. This has been a major problem in the market previously, because all the traditional video games were only offering players one-time purchases that remain locked in a virtual environment, and there was no value and there was no secondary market. But with these in-game assets benefit the game developers, but offered little utility to gamers before. And now the gamers can enjoy their collectibles, their precious items, and without having the worry about losing their value.
That's really interesting. Maybe coming back to sort of Vlad, it wouldn't be a webinar in 2021 without talking about, you know, the pandemic. Do you think as the pandemic accelerated the want to trade assets in games and generally, what's your sort of take on that?
Well, I've kind of answered these questions a couple of times, as you can imagine, in the last few months. And my answer is I'm trying to be sad, because pandemic is a very sad thing happening to the humanity and to a lot of my friends and their relatives and everything. But if we focus on the business, I can't complain, because the more people were staying home, the more their basic instincts were coming, and they wanted to spend their time to have fun, to play, to trade, to understand, and they had time. For example, the concept Gary perfectly explained about NFTs. It's not an easy thing to understand, but when you have enough time and you see something interesting is happening, and let me check it out. And I've seen so many people I've tried to involve in gaming or in trading or in items, and they're like, I have a better thing to do. But sitting there back there sheltered at home, they had no choice. And now they're never coming out, because, you know, there's just the way in, there's no way out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was going to say to sort of Gary, similar sort of question. Obviously, you know, the NFTs that you look at are not necessarily related exactly to gaming. So have you seen that people have just become a little bit more interested in the concept? Has that sort of peaked in some way?
Absolutely. I mean, this whole started, as Vlad explained, it started in games, this whole idea of virtual goods and paying for digital items. And what's happened is, as Vlad perfectly explained, people have had more time to look into things. And what we're about to experience, and this is not hype, this is genuine, NFTs are going to experience an amazing, explosive growth over the next few months, because it's about to step into mainstream. So far, there's been a huge amount of resistance and suspicion about blockchain in general. It's associated with too many bad things in people's minds, people who don't understand blockchain, the associations, a little like the analogy I always give, you'll forgive me, the early days of internet where it was associated with porn. And therefore it was a bad thing. Or the early days of video games, which I was involved with, which were bad, you know, that they were corrupting children's minds. And you find that with every new technology, there's always a negative perception. But we're just about to get into what's interesting is that NFTs are going to demonstrate one of the real values of the blockchain. Cryptocurrency still has that suspicion and aura about it. But NFTs are entirely different things, and people will be able to appreciate the value more. And then hopefully from that understanding, might have a more open mind and embrace the concept of blockchain, including cryptocurrency generally. That's my belief. But what's happening is, yes, the pandemic has allowed people to understand and experience more about digital collectibles, what NFTs are, and then that adoption is growing hugely. And with companies like ourselves, getting well-known brands like Godzilla v Kong movie, which we've got in Pacific Rim, and all sorts of movies, sports, games, music artists, every genre, every entertainment genre will be encompassed within the NFT space and offering. And therefore, it's going to attract a lot of attention to the mainstream. And that's why it's about to explode onto the market in a mainstream type of way. And certainly the pandemic has contributed to that acceleration. Long answer again.
It's very interesting. I was just going to come back to Vlad there quickly, if we could, because obviously, you know, one of the key things of DMarket, as I understand it, is that obviously the assets are not linked purely to one game provider or one manufacturer, aren't they? And it's more a question of a marketplace. So have you seen more demand for people to sort of interact in that marketplace rather than within individual games? Is that something that you've sort of noticed at the same time?
If I may, I will answer a different question than the one you asked, but
okay.
You will get the information you're looking for. I think, and I can't prove it right now, but I'm sure about it, that the thing Gary was talking about, this explosion of NFTs, of blockchain, of trading and items, it's very tightly connected to the ability to show off. For example, like right now, Christie's is doing their auction for the NFT digital art. This is big. This is big name. This is old money, but they understand what's happening, and this is big for everyone. But the tiny little catch here is that when you're buying a luxurious or a very rare thing like a car or a painting, you can show it off for your guests, and this is why you're buying it. Not just an investment. Sometimes it ends up just with showing off. And that's why it just started. It's just a piece of it with the video games, because this is where you can show off those items, skins, and everything else, and show everybody else how cool you are. Again, one more just the human thing we have inside. So this catch, whereas NFTs rise, is very tightly connected with the products wrapped around it, so that humans can show off, not only make profits. We will, and they're already doing it. Again, criticism is a huge thing, but something to show them off in very different other aspects in the world, that would get another 100x to the whole wave, which is 100% coming right away.
I can see Gary wants to say something about that.
It's just this backdrop behind me is one of our environments, and that's precisely what Vlad's describing. It's not enough that you're buying these and collecting these digital items. You want to be able to display them and bring your friends into these environments and show off and say, look what I've got. In the corner there is the figure from Lost in Space, and all of these things animate. And so you bring your friends in, you've got voice over IP, and you show them around. We've got different environments depending on the, we have aircraft hangar type environments where you can display spaceships and vehicles. So it's very, very important that you have that ability. And you know, collecting is not just about amassing privately your goods. You want to show people what you have.
It's very interesting. I'm sort of thinking along the same sort of concept. Kind of esports kind of was in that same sort of way. It was a team of people that wanted to come together and show the world that they were the best team and everything else. So sort of coming to Onur on your side of things, have you noticed, bearing in mind that obviously as a you know a fintech in that market, you see a lot of the transactions that are going on. Have you seen a difference in the way that esports sort of tournaments have been generating revenues and exposing people? during the pandemic? Because obviously venues, the big sort of massive games with lots of people watching at the same time, have changed quite a bit, haven't they?
Absolutely. That's pretty much, I don't want to say it was pandemic, but that's pretty much the reason of the massive rise in the gaming popularity was the pandemic. People were trying to find different ways to monetize their hobbies. As gaming market grew, there was more demand, and as well as like more investment opportunity for the gamers and the gaming companies and esports teams. And all these companies were looking for ways to monetize by using digital collectibles or in-game assets. And there's a massive spike in the demand and sponsorship deals. I mean, until recently, gaming was categorized as a hobby for the teenagers, or like negatively depicted as like the geek guys spending their hours in front of a computer. But however, I mean, the tendency has shifted. Is now, I mean, it's now reaching every generation and social category. And as I said, it's device agnostic. You don't need a computer screen. You can play it on your mobiles, on your like consoles, and like bunch of different platforms. And it became a lifestyle as gaming. And so naturally there has been more interest in optimizing ways to move your money around, make the payments, do not lose the value of your favorite game item that you have spent your years, you know. So that's amazing. Yeah.
Maybe coming to Vlad again there. Have you seen, or do you think you're going to see, as we start looking into what the future of sort of in-game assets might be, more assets that are being branded and being sponsored by sort of esports teams or, you know, big retail brands? Can you see a move to that within the in-game assets, or is it still going to be run by the developers themselves?
Well, I'm doing all I can and even more to make it happen quicker than it will eventually happen. So what is different if we compare, as you just said, esports and brands, is emotional connection. So when this is my favorite esports team, and this is my favorite guy, so I know Simple and I vow for him. And when I watch him, when I watch for him, I want to wear everything he wears. I want to touch him, and this is you can like, I don't know, Apple laptops, but this is not like something you want to touch and but when this is a celebrity like sportsman who is crafting his way onto the top, this is emotional connection, which will give so much more value to any collectibles connected to him, and thanks to blockchain and NFTs and other access to that. So it's gonna happen. And I hope to make it happen quicker than slower, but and I hope Onur will help as well.
Okay, interesting. Quick and slow. Maybe coming back to sort of Gary, thinking about that thing, because obviously there's a lot of talk, you know, of, you know, the people like Nike and everyone else getting involved in not just in-game assets, but also in NFTs as well. And then even I read recently that Microsoft on their Azure platform are actually starting to use NFTs to reward developers for developing on it. So where do you kind of see that sort of collectibles or sort of asset trading go?
I think it's quite broad, and with every nascent sector, you're going to get innovation and new ways of using it. I'd like to think we've been innovative in the way we use it, and Vlad said they're getting into NFTs as well, got into NFTs, and I'm sure they've got creative ways, as has Onur. I mean, you know, you identify opportunities and think this is a great way to leverage the whole NFT concept. We look at it as we're categorizing the people who buy NFTs on our platform, and this only applies to us, in sort of two categories. One is the collector who likes to collect items and wants the set. So this is unlike having a skin in a game and just wants a really cool backpack or something they can show off to their friends. This is, I want every item in this set of collections, a little like baseball cards, the completionist, if you like. And then also the secondary collector is the investor. They're buying it for the value and saying, I'm buying this for $1,000 today, and I think this is going to be worth $5,000 in 6 months' time. Those are the collectors. Then we've got the fans. And it's not so much collectibles, it's more merchandise, which is what Vlad was alluding to, and I think Onur as well, which is they want, it's a way for fans to have brand engagement, celebrities to have brand engagement with their fans. So you want to wear the same apparel and have a t-shirt that has the name of your favorite esports champion or your favorite celebrity or whatever. And it's a way of engaging more closely. And again, the pandemic has brought this whole Zoom culture more into the mainstream. So people are more accepting of digital interaction like we're doing now, rather than the way it used to be, which was around a table. Which means that a celebrity, an esports champion over in Vancouver, don't know why I thought of that, in Canada, can interact directly with some guy in Iceland and not necessarily have a conversation, but there can be some verbal or textual interaction between the two, or you can sell a happy birthday greeting that's personalized to you from your favorite celebrity. These things are all possible now through NFTs. They were before, but not in a sort of controlled way. And going back to the whole bragging rights concept, this is what a lot of that is based on. So you've got your fans and you've got your collectors, and NFTs sort of cater for both.
Interesting. Onur, I was going to just, obviously we are the FinTech Times, so I was just going to bring this back into financial services for a minute, just to kind of pull it all together, because one of the interesting things obviously is that with both the in-game assets and the NFTs, there's always a trade of value in some way. And, you know, and for most people, it's going to be a fiat currency or a cryptocurrency in that respect. I know you're probably aware that, you know, someone like Epic Games and Apple are having a little bit of an argument, shall we say, or disagreement. Let's put it as a disagreement at the moment as to, you know, where these sort of payment lays. Do you see that sort of like the brands and the developers are really calling the shots with how payments need to be made, or what's your sort of viewpoint on that?
All right. To be honest, those are the features that I was mentioning that we've been developing. So currently, I believe Apple was charging 30% out of every transaction in iTunes Store, and it's not enough for these gamers to leverage their game and scale these companies, because at the end of the day, they need the marketing dollars, they need the profits. And this tokenization in the future for sure will witness the mainstream adoption. This is currently being limited because there's a learning curve it's easy to justify in-game items because it's in-game items that people can easily get the idea of the blockchain use. But as you been mentioning, the NFT is the real feature. You know, any type of digital collectible is the new feature, and you will need a fiat gateway in order to access this medium, top up your account in order to do the exchange. So where we're standing right now is we're going to be doing everything to incentivize who wants to invest in digital items and make their lives easier, move their money instantly, play it anywhere, get the access their funds anywhere.
Yeah. I think that's going to be quite an interesting one. Sort of coming to Vlad, I wanted to ask your sort of comments on that as well, because I'm assuming you obviously deal with quite a few game developers, and, you know, as I think you sort of say, you know, it's a multi-billion-dollar economy just in skins. So there's going to be other companies that want a slice of that money, I guess.
Well, just like in CSGO skins, the secondary market is around like $5 billion in turnover per year. So, and that's an interesting market, but this is just one game. So we have a client whom we're right now just consulting, but you know, it's interesting because they came to us. They're one of the biggest real world, I call it, exchanges from Germany, who turn over billions of dollars, billions of euros per day in currency exchange, in stocks and everything else, billions and billions per day. So what they want to do, they want to build another part of it, trading all those NFTs for paintings, for games, for esports, anything. They just want accredited investors to be able to pull in like again, millions, hundreds of millions, dozens of millions of dollars into the exchange to trade those assets. So they're trying to understand how it works and how they do it even quick and dirty, but they just want to do it now because they understand that that's a lot of money and billions of dollars, and they want to step in first. So as I assume, if they do it, so guys on New York Stock Exchange started doing it even earlier, maybe, that's my assumption. And if those people from, let's say, old school markets are already doing something around items, NFTs, tradings, security money coming in, it means that it's going to grow even faster than anyone on this call is thinking about it. That's maybe could be helpful for the FinTech Times listeners, first of all. And secondly, about Apple and Google, the funny thing is that, and from my perspective, again, it's not the question you asked, but it's a funny story because it's touching everything we talked about. That from my perspective, they're both multi-billion-dollar companies, and everyone is just fighting for their interest, and their pure interest is making more money and getting a bigger share of the market. That's it. But for now, the interests of everyone on this call it just happened so, are the same with Tim Sweeney and Epic Games. It could change in 6 months, but for now, we're in the same boat with them. So their pure corporate interest to lower this income barrier and their, let's say, items taxation for money coming in and out from 30% to a market value, which honestly is about a couple percent, that's where we're all together with them for now.
Yeah. Okay, it's kind of interesting, I guess, Gary, from your perspective, and the sort of the NFTs that you deal with, there's no, as you said, the blockchain proves the ownership of where the collectible came from. So I'm guessing that there's not really too much concern on the payment gateway or how and who it's paid for. Or would I be wrong in that?
There is, because obviously we're operating different ecosystems, as I explained, on different platforms, and without getting into too much detail, the concept of Apple is that you can only use items that are bought via Apple. So you have to pay your 30%. So if someone buys something from our platform, that's a 30% chunk off that item. I don't really want to get into the politics of it, but I'm certain that Amazon don't pay 30% to Apple for every transaction that's conducted over an iPhone. So there's a little bit of unfairness there, but I do also want to pick up on one of Vlad's points, specifically involving FinTech, and that is that a lot of companies now, financial companies, are looking at NFTs to put into things like hedge funds. Some artwork is selling for 7 figures. We've just commissioned a major artist who will be coming onto our platform, and his stuff his work is going to go for some very, very serious money. And again, because if you look in the real world, someone says they make a print and it's a limited edition of 100 prints and they're $1,000 each, then you're taking their word that there are just 100 of these prints made. But when you're talking about an NFT, you can verify that absolutely, that there are only and only ever will be 100 prints made in this series. And that gives it the value and the rarity and the scarcity. And therefore, it's getting a lot of attention from investors who are looking for new ways to invest. And NFTs are offering that opportunity, I believe. Do you think so, Onur?
Absolutely. I mean, people were asking for non-fungible dollars. It didn't happen. So we had to make the switch to non-fungible tokens. I mean, you're saving against the retail prices. I mean, this way, like starting with the gamers or like the early adopters, they're encouraged to invest in larger sums into digital collectibles rather than keeping their so-called precious dollars, which is not fungible. I mean, which is fungible, yeah.
If I may, to add a little bit, maybe as a joke, but like just a 50% of a joke, is that it didn't happen with us, Onur, but guys from Tether successfully did it. And now they're sometimes able to print out like $1 billion per day just in one transaction. It's a miracle, and I haven't seen anyone being able to produce that amount of money that easy. So somebody did it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting secondary sort of topic almost, but you know, there is a lot of governments and a lot of regulatory bodies that obviously are paying this a lot more attention. It kind of goes back to, I think, what Onur's point was a while ago, where you know, gaming was never seen as a profession; it was seen as a hobby. And almost, you know, when all of the regulators and the government people, they were busy doing their other things over here, all of a sudden it became a billion-trillion-dollar industry overnight, and now everybody wants a piece. So it's kind of like an interesting dynamic. And I don't think there's really been another kind of industry that's kind of appeared and been in stealth mode for kind of so long as it has been with the gaming industry, that's then bred all of these other sort of errors, which I think is why it's such a sort of fascinating sort of industry, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to an earlier point about the suspicion and everything else, when we started, about 3 years ago, we were starting to get involved in the blockchain and the very, very early days of NFTs. And we were looking over our shoulders because no one knew how the regulation would turn out. And we were having to anticipate the best strategy in terms of where to form the company. Should we be in Gibraltar, which was crypto friendly, or should we be in the Seychelles or Puerto Rico or somewhere? And we ended up just incorporating in the UK, because you say, okay, well, you know, something's got to happen. There has to be regulation, because once there is regulation, then people will start trusting it more. There is this innate suspicion about everything blockchain, particularly cryptocurrency, but once it's regulated, not over-regulated, but once there are rules in place, that will make people feel a lot more comfortable about investing in blockchain items, which is a little bit of a blocker at the moment. It's all down to perception, but governments really, really need to get a grip on it, because it's happening whether they want it or not. And now is the opportunity they have to sort of put laws and legislation in place that doesn't control it, but monitors it and makes sure that governments can benefit also. And they should embrace it, because it does also, and without getting into it in this conversation, relieve a lot of the problems that they're confronting as well.
It's really interesting, Gary, talking to somebody that I didn't want to say anything derogatory, but I was going to say, from a financial service background, I'm sure Onur will back me up on this one, saying, yeah, regulation is a good thing, but sometimes it gets very, very complicated very, very quickly, and becomes a massive barrier to entry for startups and everything else to sort of get into markets. But I don't know, Onur, if you want to sort of comment on a little bit of regulation. Let's not turn this into a RegTech webinar, but...
I mean, Gary put it in the best possible way. I mean, it's regulation, not over-regulation. You know, that's most of the time, that's what the problem is. I mean, we shouldn't make it so complicated. We should see, observe really closely, and as it scales it up, like we should do it on the way, you know, because whether they want it or not, it's happening. As long as you have both sides of the market, you have the supply and the demand is like picking up. It's extremely fast. I mean, we should start working on it to regulate it, not over-regulate it.
There's a really interesting one. I think we could probably continue this conversation for another half an hour or an hour or so, but we're going to need to, unfortunately, call it a day there. I was just going to really go around each of you, and maybe starting with Vlad, just ask, you know, we talked a little bit about the future you're trying to get to. Maybe just give us a quick overview of where you think your particular section of the sort of the gaming market is going.
There is an interesting thought, which I'm not sure I 100% believe in it, but I like it. And it seems like we're moving into that direction, that bigger games are actually becoming new internet, not just a social network, the whole thing. Because in some games, you can already play, socialize, buy, sell, trade, get some news, have some fun, get out, and never come to any other website. This is something what I wanted to share with you, and this is a long-term thought, but could bring some of your, for example, listeners to some interesting thoughts and moves. I don't know, but it's happening. It's interesting, and I'm happy to live in these times.
We're not talking about a Ready Player One scenario, are we?
Ready Player Two.
Ready for that day. Excellent. Gary, maybe just coming to you as well for your sort of summing up thoughts and where you think NFTs are going to go.
Yeah, the future is in some way terrifying. I've always prided myself on being able to look ahead 5 years and figure out where things will be. It's really difficult because the whole innate nature of the blockchain will fundamentally change a lot of the way every business is conducted. And because it's so nascent and innovative, we still don't know exactly how that's going to happen. We're just a small part of it. We're exploiting one part of NFTs, but NFTs are going to become embedded. Your house will become an NFT. You buy your house, the transaction will take over the blockchain. You won't have a paper deed. That will be on the blockchain and it's yours and it's permanent until you sell it. And any valuable item will be earmarked that way. I am sure. I don't know where the future's going precisely, but I do know this is going to change everything dramatically over the next few years, not the next 10 years or 20 years, over the next few years. And people need to be ready for it. And that's a good thing. I'm not being alarmist about it. It's a positive thing.
That's really interesting. If there's anything that can stop me paying lawyers for my house purchase that's going through at the moment, just to push bits of paper backwards and forwards, that would be amazing. But keeping on topic, Onur, if you could maybe give us a quick sort of overview, maybe with a slightly more sort of financial services sort of angle to where you think the future is going to be within gaming and everything.
Sure, certainly. I mean, we will be keeping our partnership and sponsorship deals going on, and to allow the game developers to access their funds without having the third parties interfere and get the big chunk of it, allowing gamers to top up their wallets on their favorite gaming platforms, and maybe soon we'll allow them to access NFTs, hopefully. Looking forward to. But this is exciting times, and anywhere.
Wonderful. So as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to all three of you. Thank you all for giving up your valuable time to speak with us today. Thank you again.
Thanks very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
to meet you,
Thank
Vlad.
you. Pleasure.
Pleasure.